Episode 336, which was earlier this week, we talked about the gap between having standards and having structure. And if that one hit close to home, this one might hit even closer, because today I want to talk about what a lot of multiple prep teachers do when they don't have curriculum and they're not sure where to start. They collect Pinterest boards, Instagram saves, Google Drive folders, random tabs, open at midnight, conference handouts, slide decks from a colleague down the hall, ideas everywhere. And here's the thing, it feels productive. It feels like planning, but collecting resources and building a course are two completely different things. And at some point, most secondary teachers hit this wall. I have so much stuff and I still don't feel prepared to teach this. That's the disconnect I want to talk about today. Welcome to the Secondary Teacher Podcast, the podcast for middle and high school teachers juggling multiple preps to get the strategies to reduce overwhelm so that you don't have to choose between being an effective teacher and prioritizing important relationships. I'm your host, Kristen Masick, a 10-year high school engineering teacher, former middle school assistant principal, and teacher coach. Every week, we will discuss strategies, systems, and time-saving tips to help you not only survive but thrive as a multiple prep teacher. I need to fully admit something before we go any further. I am absolutely the kind of person who collects things. Always have been. And in my early years of teaching, I genuinely thought resource collection was planning. I'd come home from summer conferences with entire folders full of materials. I'd save every idea I came across. I'd screenshot things at 11 p.m. thinking, I'll use that someday. And then one year, a colleague gave me her entire set of architecture slide decks, every unit. All of it. At the time, I thought, this is incredible. This is going to save me so much time. And technically, it gave me content, but it didn't give me a course, because what I didn't understand yet was this. Slides are not instruction, they're support for instruction. And there's a huge difference. I had all this content sitting in front of me, but no real teaching framework around it. No discussion built in, no processing time, no application, no lesson flow holding it together. So I'd stand up there and deliver information, and students would sit there and receive it. And I'd constantly feel like I was patching things together in real time. Not because the resources were bad, but because resources alone are not a planning system. That was a big shift. But it didn't stop me from falling into the same trap in a different way. Because a few summers later, this was pre-AI. So finding anything specific meant actually digging through Google search results. I became completely obsessed with an idea. Movie clips. It started innocently enough. I came across a teacher using the vector scene from Despicable Me. You know, the one where he says, I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah. Okay, I am slightly embarrassed I did that. But I thought, what if I had a whole bank of clips like that? One for every unit, every concept. So that became my summer goal. I spent actual time searching for clips, organizing clips, saving clips, building this imaginary library that was going to make me the most engaging teacher in the building. And eventually, I gave up, because finding the right clip for a specific academic concept using a Google search in the pre-AI era was nearly impossible. The idea was bigger than the execution. But here's the part I didn't expect. Years later, I'm sitting on the couch watching a movie with my kids, and something comes on the screen, and I think, I could show that clip to my students this week. No searching, no organizing, no summer project. Just living my life and noticing something that fit. And that's when it clicked. The clips were never the problem. The hunting was. When I stopped trying to build a resource library and started trusting that good teaching moments would show up naturally, planning got lighter. Not because I had less, because I stopped trying to collect my way into feeling prepared. If you're sitting on a pile of saved ideas right now and still feeling unprepared, that's exactly who the free secondary teacher planning calendar was built for. It helps you stop drowning in disconnected resources and start building actual structure. Grab it in the show notes along with the unit planning lab waitlist for early access when doors open. All right, let's talk about why this keeps happening and what to do instead. Clarity doesn't come from collecting, it comes from building. And for multiple prep teachers trying to build courses without a provided curriculum, that distinction changes everything. Here's what I want you to hear. because this is not about being disorganized or undisciplined. Resource collecting is how a lot of elective teachers and CT teachers try to compensate for not having curriculum. When you don't have a textbook, a scope and sequence, or a provided unit plan, you go looking for something to fill that gap. And the internet is very good at giving you things that look like answers. A great TPT activity, a Pinterest lesson idea, a slide deck from a teacher in another state. And so you save it and you save the next one and the one after that. And before long, you have hundreds of resources and zero clarity. Because here's what all that collecting actually creates: decision fatigue. Every saved resource is an open loop, another thing your brain has to hold on to and eventually sort through. Another decision about whether it fits, where it goes, and how to use it. And teacher productivity doesn't come from having more options. It comes from having fewer decisions to make. That's what structure does. And that's what a resource library, no matter how big, cannot do for you. So what does it look like to actually stop collecting and start building? It starts with a mindset flip. Resources don't create structure. Structure tells you which resources you need. When you know your unit goals, your lesson flow, and your pacing, you stop needing to save everything just in case. You know exactly what you're looking for, and you only go find it when you actually need it. Here's what that looks like practically for a multiple prep teacher. Start with your unit goals, not your resource pile. Before you open Pinterest or TPT or your saved folder, write down what you actually want students to be able to do by the end of the unit, not what you want to cover, what you want them to be able to do. That single question will immediately tell you whether a resource is useful or just interesting. Useful fits the goal, interesting gets saved and never used. Build your lesson flow before you fill it in. What does a lesson in your class actually look like from start to finish? If you can answer that, if you have a repeatable shape your lessons follow, then finding resources becomes simple. You're just looking for something that fits a specific slot in a structure you already have. This is exactly why the Introduce, Practice, Produce framework matters so much for secondary teachers managing multiple courses. When your lessons follow a consistent shape, you stop making structural decisions every single time you sit down to plan. You make them once, and then you just fill in the content. We're going to go deep on that framework in an upcoming episode, but start thinking about it now. Does your planning have a repeatable shape, or are you starting from scratch every time? Use what you already have before you go looking for more. Seriously, before you open a new tab, look at what you already have saved. Chances are you already have something that works. You just haven't built the structure that tells you where it fits yet. I want to come back to that movie night moment because I think it's actually the best illustration of what sustainable teacher planning feels like when you get it right. It wasn't hunting, it wasn't organizing, it wasn't trying to build a library. I was just living and I noticed something that fit. That's what happens when your structure is solid. You stop desperately searching for resources to fill gaps because you know your course well enough to recognize a good fit when you stumble across it naturally. You probably already have enough ideas. What you need now is the structure that tells you where they go. So this summer, before you save one more thing, ask yourself, do I need more materials or do I need a clearer structure for using what I already have? That question will save you more time than any resource library ever could. Coming up next in the series, we're shifting from what not to do into what actually works. I'm going to walk you through the secondary teacher strategies I use for building courses from scratch, even when you're starting with nothing but a standard and a blank page. If you're a multiple prep teacher who has stared at an empty unit plan, wondering where to even begin, that one's for you. Grab the free secondary teacher planning calendar in the show notes and join the unit planning lab waitlist while you're there. Both are built for secondary teachers who are done collecting and ready to actually build something. Finish something that makes tomorrow lighter. I'll see you next time.